My name is Lisa Morgan. I'm 32 years old, and for as long as I can remember, I've been the responsible older sister to Rebecca. We were inseparable in our youth, sharing secrets, nurturing dreams, and growing up as best friends. When Rebecca became engaged, I was honored and genuinely thrilled to be asked to serve as her maid of honor. I invested not only thousands of dollars and countless hours, but also my heart, in creating what I hoped would be a flawless celebration of her love. However, as many know, family dynamics can be deeply complex, especially within a household ruled by a mother like ours. Deborah, our mother, has always commanded the spotlight, often at the expense of anyone who dared challenge her. I could never have anticipated the moment she would look me in the eyes and say something that would alter the way I saw our relationship forever. If you find yourself facing family tension or feeling displaced in your own story, you're not alone. I encourage you to share your experience in the comments, like this video and subscribe. What follows is a story of loyalty, heartbreak, and learning to reclaim your voice. Growing up, I naturally assumed the role of protector. From teaching Rebecca to tie her shoes to guiding her through the maze of adolescence, I was a constant presence she could rely on. Our mother never made her favoritism a secret. Rebecca, with her artistic flair and sunny disposition, was celebrated. I, in contrast, was the pragmatic child who was often told I needed to lighten up. My father, Thomas, chose silence over resistance when Deborah overstepped, preferring tranquility to conflict. As the eldest, I became the default problem solver. When the roof leaked, I found the contractor. When bills exceeded the family budget, I dipped into my own savings. That sense of duty didn't end in adulthood. I helped support Rebecca through her art history degree, quietly covering the financial gaps our parents couldn't or wouldn't manage. Professionally, I carved out a successful career as a financial consultant at a prestigious firm in Boston. Ironically, while I managed high-value investment portfolios, I was still expected to handle my family's financial emergencies. And yet, I didn't resent it. Supporting Rebecca brought me sincere joy. When she met James Wilson at an art gallery opening 3 years ago, I recognized our compatibility immediately. James, the son of a wealthy family, was refreshingly grounded. He respected Rebecca's creative ambitions and encouraged her professional growth. Their engagement came after 2 years of dating. I'll never forget the elated phone call that morning. "Lisa," he proposed. "You're going to be my maid of honor, right? I can't do this without you." Her happiness was contagious. "Of course," I replied. In that moment, I was already visualizing floral palettes and timelines. The early stages of planning were idyllic. Rebecca and I spent weekends touring venues, crafting Pinterest boards, and compiling notes. My apartment transformed into a makeshift wedding office, with bridal magazines and fabric swatches scattered across every surface. But that harmony was short-lived. The first indication that things were changing arrived at a family dinner to discuss the budget. My mother walked in, proudly holding a leather-bound wedding planner I'd never seen before. "I've already secured the Clayton Hotel," she declared, before the appetizers had even been served. They had a cancellation this summer. I took it. Rebecca looked surprised, but not upset. "Mom, that's so generous." Lisa and I were still looking at venues, though. Deborah brushed it off. "Darling, the Clayton is always booked." We were lucky. Besides, I've always pictured your wedding there. Her smile was warm, but the glance she shot me was unmistakably smug. That moment marked a shift. From then on, our mother took the reins. She disregarded the vendors Rebecca and I had researched, favoring her own connections. The color palette we had chosen was dismissed as uninspired. When I voiced concern, Rebecca reassured me. "Mom's really enjoying herself, and it takes some pressure off me. Plus, she and Dad are footing a lot of the bill." So I took a step back, still involved, but increasingly sidelined. Then, I noticed my cousin Megan's growing presence. Megan, who had always hovered at the edges of family events, suddenly appeared center stage. She began attending vendor meetings and showing up in social media posts, photos of cake tastings and dress fittings I hadn't even known about. In one picture, she was holding fabric samples, assisting with bridesmaid dress decisions. That had always been my role. "Rebecca seems really close to Megan lately," I mentioned to my boyfriend, Tyler, one evening. "She probably just has more free time," he offered. "You've been swamped with work." "Maybe." But a quiet unease began to grow. As the months passed, my involvement all but disappeared. Invitations to planning sessions stopped. When I reached out, Rebecca's replies were curt and distant. "Mom's handling it," or "already taken care of." Still, I continued contributing financially, covering the cost of the photographer Rebecca loved, despite our mother's disapproval of the price. In the weeks leading up to the wedding, I continued to contribute quietly behind the scenes. I ordered custom welcome baskets for out-of-town guests and meticulously arranged what I hoped would be the perfect wedding gift, a luxury honeymoon in Bali. It included first-class flights, a private oceanfront villa, and personalized experiences designed to celebrate the beginning of Rebecca's new chapter. I told myself that after the wedding, things would return to normal, that the tension, the exclusion, the reassigning of my role to others was all temporary. A stressful moment. We'd laugh about Mom's overreach one day, glass of wine in hand, in the comfort of her new apartment. I didn't realize then just how wrong I was, or how rapidly the situation would unravel. The realization hit with the force of betrayal. I learned about Rebecca's wedding dress appointment through a colleague. It was an ordinary Tuesday morning when Natalie, a coworker who happened to know the boutique owner, smiled across the office. "How was Rebecca's appointment yesterday?" Sandra said she found the dress right away. I froze mid-sip, my coffee suspended halfway to my lips. "What appointment?" Natalie's smile faltered. "Oh, at Elegant Moments. Sandra mentioned your mom, sister, and cousin were there for hours with champagne. I just assumed you were with them." I managed to mutter something vague about a last-minute work emergency before escaping to the restroom. There, alone with my reflection, I tried to process what had just happened. My mother, my cousin Megan, and my sister had gone wedding dress shopping without me. A moment Rebecca and I had fantasized about since childhood. Pillowcases used as veils, giggling promises that we would be there for each other's big days. All of it erased in a quiet decision I hadn't even been told about. That evening, I called Rebecca. My voice was measured, though my pulse was rapid. "How was dress shopping?" A beat of silence. "Oh, that? It wasn't supposed to be the real appointment. Mom had booked something casually just to look. Megan happened to be free, so she came along for a second opinion." Another pause. "It all happened kind of fast." "I could have made myself free," I said gently. "You could have asked." "Lisa, please don't make this a big deal. There's still so much wedding stuff you can be part of." But there wasn't. I wasn't asked to help with the bridal shower planning, though I was asked to contribute financially toward the venue deposit. Megan took full control of the bachelorette party, choosing a destination I knew Rebecca wouldn't genuinely enjoy. When I suggested alternatives, based on a lifetime of knowing my sister, they were dismissed. "That's not what Rebecca wants anymore," I was told. Still, I held on to hope. I finalized every detail of the honeymoon gift, spending $8,600 of my own savings. I imagined presenting it to Rebecca at the rehearsal dinner, watching her eyes widen in joy, feeling her arms around me in a familiar hug that meant things were finally right again. Instead, she kept drifting farther away. Our Sunday brunches, once sacred, became occasional, then non-existent. When we did speak, our exchanges were surface-level and strained. Eventually, I asked the question outright. "Is everything okay between us?" Rebecca didn't meet my eyes. "Everything's fine. I'm just really busy. Mom's handling most of the planning now." At a family gathering that May, 2 months before the wedding, I overheard a conversation that altered the course of everything. I had stepped into the kitchen to refill my glass of water when I heard my name from the dining room. "Lisa's always been difficult," my mother said, her voice clear and casual. "Rebecca's finally seeing it. She always needs to control everything. It's always about her accomplishments." "Must be hard for Rebecca," Megan replied sympathetically. "Especially during her wedding, when it should be about her." "Exactly," my mother agreed. "That's why we've had to minimize Lisa's involvement. For Rebecca's sake." I stood frozen, the water overflowing from the glass in my hand, their words echoing like a slow unraveling of a thread I had clung to for years. That night, I collapsed into Tyler's arms and finally gave voice to the fears I had long tried to suppress. What if they don't want me at the wedding at all? What if all this exclusion has been leading to that? He held me, his presence grounding. That's not possible. You're her sister. You've done nothing but love and support her. You don't know my mother, I whispered. She has a way of twisting everything, of making herself the victim, no matter what she's done. Then you need to speak with Rebecca, he said calmly but firmly. No more guessing. You deserve answers. He was right. It was time to stop waiting. The next morning, I sent Rebecca a message. Need to talk about the wedding and our relationship. Can we meet tomorrow? Hours passed before she replied. Really busy with wedding stuff. Come to Mom and Dad's on Thursday at 7 o'clock. We can talk then. Those 5 days stretched endlessly. I rehearsed what I would say, practiced breathing through the pain, reminded myself that Rebecca might be caught between love and pressure. That Thursday evening, I parked outside our parents' colonial-style house, the warm summer air strangely still. I walked up the front steps with cautious hope, believing perhaps there was still time to mend what had broken. I had no way of knowing that I was walking into something far more calculated, an ambush that would shatter the very foundation of my family and force me to choose between the loyalty I had always given and the self-respect I could no longer afford to abandon. The driveway felt like unfamiliar ground. Once a stage for hopscotch, sidewalk chalk, and childhood laughter, it now seemed foreign, hollowed out by time and betrayal. I checked my reflection in the rearview mirror, straightened my blouse, and inhaled deeply before making my way to the front door. Before I could knock, the door opened. My mother stood in the frame, her expression unreadable. "We're in the living room," she said flatly, turning on her heel without waiting for a response. The scene inside felt curated, deliberately arranged like a tableau meant to deliver a message. My father sat slouched in his usual armchair, his posture uneasy, skin pale beneath the soft glow of the table lamp. Rebecca sat on the edge of the sofa, her hands nervously twisting in her lap. Behind her, my mother stood with one hand on the back of the couch, her stance simultaneously protective and possessive. In what had always been my seat during family talks, my place, sat Megan. Her face bore a confusing mixture of smugness and performative concern. "What's going on?" I asked, remaining standing as no one offered me a seat. "Rebecca, I thought you and I were going to talk." "That's why we're all here," my mother said quickly, intercepting. "There's something important you need to understand about the wedding." A quiet tension settled over the room, sharp and suffocating. "We've been discussing things," she continued, adopting that familiar condescending tone, well practiced and razor sharp. "And we've all agreed that your involvement in the wedding has become problematic." "Problematic?" I repeated, my eyes locking on Rebecca's. She looked away. "Your need to control, your constant commentary, your insistence on involving yourself in every decision, overshadowing what should be Rebecca's moment," my mother said, listing her accusations like a prepared script. "Even your financial contributions have been unhelpful. Manipulative, even." I felt the floor shift beneath me, not literally, but emotionally, as if I'd stepped into a warped version of reality where logic no longer applied. "Rebecca," I asked gently, "do you feel that way?" She finally looked up, her eyes conflicted but her voice rehearsed. "It's just been really stressful, Lisa. Every time you're involved, it feels like there's tension. Mom thinks." "Mom thinks," I repeated quietly. "But what do you think?" She hesitated. Before she could respond, our mother stepped forward, effectively cutting her off. "What Rebecca thinks is that her wedding should be a joyful experience, and your presence would make that impossible." It took a moment for the meaning to register. I tried to clarify. "My presence during the planning process." Her eyes narrowed slightly, lips twitching into a self-satisfied curve. "No. At the wedding. At all. You're not welcome. Not as maid of honor, not as a bridesmaid, not as a guest. It's better this way." The silence that followed was total. The antique clock on the mantel ticked audibly in the background, marking each second with mechanical precision. My father stared at the floor. Megan studied her nails. And Rebecca, my sister, my closest friend for 30 years, said nothing. Just silence. "I see," I said finally, surprised at how even my voice sounded. "When was this decision made?" "We've been moving toward this for some time," my mother said, mistaking my composure for compliance. "Rebecca asked Megan to be her maid of honor several weeks ago. We just hadn't made it official." I turned to Megan. She met my gaze now, eyes gleaming with something that looked disturbingly like victory. "Congratulations," I said flatly. "It's nothing personal," she offered, a lie so transparent it almost made me laugh. "Nothing personal," I echoed. "About being cut out of my sister's wedding. My sister's life." I turned back to Rebecca one final time. "Is this really what you want?" My mother interrupted again, insistent. "Rebecca wants peace. And you've never been able to let things go. The venue wasn't good enough. The caterer didn't meet your standards. Everything had to go through you." "That's not true," I said, my voice rising slightly for the first time. "I supported every decision, even when I wasn't consulted. I paid for things I wasn't even asked to pay for." "Exactly," she snapped. "That's the problem. You throw money around like it gives you control. It's manipulative. That's why we had to draw the line." I turned to my father. Our eyes met for the briefest moment. His were weary, apologetic. Then, as always, he looked away. His silence was nothing new, but it had never felt so definitive. And then clarity. Pure, cold clarity. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't a misstep or a momentary lapse in judgment. This had been planned. A slow, deliberate erasure. "Good to know," I said. There was nothing else to say. I turned and walked to the door. Behind me, Rebecca said my name once, softly, without conviction. No one followed me. No one tried to stop me. The drive home passed in a haze. Streetlights blurred through a veil of unshed tears. Twice, I had to pull over, the road too distorted to see clearly. My phone buzzed with messages I couldn't bring myself to read. When I reached my apartment, Tyler was waiting. Hope flickered in his expression until he saw my face. "What happened?" he asked, drawing me instantly into his arms. I held on tightly, feeling something inside me break open, something that had been quietly fracturing for months. And for the first time, I didn't try to hold it together. The story tumbled out of me in fragments, disjointed, raw, and punctuated by sobs. I told Tyler everything. The orchestrated ambush, my mother's cruel satisfaction, Rebecca's silence, my father's passivity, Megan's smug triumph. "They can't do this," Tyler said when I finally finished, his voice low but firm with outrage. "You're her sister. You've done nothing but support her." "Apparently that doesn't matter," I whispered, my throat raw from grief. "Mom's been laying the groundwork for this for months, turning Rebecca against me, rewriting who I am in their minds." He reached for my hand, his grip steady and grounding. "What are you going to do?" I stared out the window at the city lights glittering against the night, strangely detached from the pain still echoing in my chest. Hollow but lighter, as if something that had been weighing me down for years had finally fallen away. "I don't know yet," I said, "but I know this much. I deserve better than this. All of it." What I didn't realize in that moment was that the confrontation in my parents' living room wasn't an ending. It was an inciting incident, a revelation that would send me into deeper darkness before I could find the light, before I could begin to heal. Sleep was impossible that night. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, reliving every detail of the evening, searching for a moment where it might have been different, where I might have misunderstood. But there was no mistaking the finality in my mother's voice, no misinterpreting the way Rebecca looked away. I hadn't imagined it. I wasn't overreacting. By 4 a.m., I gave up on sleep and sat at my kitchen table, a cold cup of tea beside me and my laptop open in front of me. I began to make a list, detailing every contribution I had made to Rebecca's wedding. Photographer deposit, $2,500. Custom welcome baskets for out-of-town guests, $800. Surprise, string quartet for the ceremony, $1,200. Vintage hairpin to match Grandma's earrings, $150. Hand-lettered invitations from a calligrapher Rebecca admired, $300. And finally, the honeymoon. First-class flights to Bali, $4,200. Private oceanfront villa, $3,800. Curated experiences, a private cooking class, sunset cruise, and hidden waterfall trek, $600. Over $15,000. All spent in the name of love and loyalty, for a wedding I was now officially banned from attending. As dawn crept over the skyline, I made my decision. With deliberate calm, I transferred the $8,600 honeymoon fund back into my account. Then, I began canceling each reservation, airfare, accommodations, experiences, every detail I had so carefully arranged. Next, I drafted a curt, professional email to the travel agent. Plans have changed. Please cancel all bookings and confirm by the end of the day. Thank you. My phone had been buzzing with calls and texts all night, but I hadn't looked until now. 3 missed calls from Rebecca, 12 from Mom, even 1 from my father, which startled me more than anything else. The texts were worse, mostly from Mom, ranging from self-pitying, "You're making this all about you again," to accusatory, "After everything we've done for you, this is how you repay us." Not a single message expressed remorse. No one reconsidered. No one reached out with honesty or apology. I made one last call to my credit card company. "I need to report some unauthorized charges," I said. "Family members have been making purchases without my consent." It wasn't technically untrue. I'd never explicitly permitted my mother to use my card for upgraded linens or the custom favors she insisted upon. By 7 a.m., I had disentangled myself from the wedding completely, financially, logistically, emotionally. I sent a short email to my manager. "Personal emergency. I'll be offline today. Thank you for your understanding." Then I turned off my phone. Completely. No buzzing. No alerts. No guilt. The silence was jarring, but oddly freeing. That morning, I wandered through the public garden alone. The paths I usually walked for pleasure felt unfamiliar beneath the weight of grief. The betrayal was physical, and ached beneath my ribs that radiated through my limbs, making each breath feel heavier than the last. How had it come to this? How had Rebecca, of all people, let this happen? At noon, I met my best friend Olivia for lunch. I hadn't planned to tell her everything. But one look at me, pale, tired, barely holding it together, and she knew something terrible had happened. When I told her, she didn't interrupt. Her eyes grew wider, her mouth tighter, until finally she set down her fork and spoke. "They did what?" she nearly shouted, loud enough that nearby tables turned. "Your own mother said that to you?" I nodded, toying with my untouched salad. "And Rebecca just sat there?" "She tried to speak a couple of times," I said softly. But Mom kept cutting her off, and she didn't stop it. She let it happen. Olivia reached across the table and took my hand. "Lisa," she said, her voice lowering, "there's something you should know. I didn't say anything before because I didn't want to stir the pot, but now I think you need to hear it." My heart tightened. "What?" "She's been saying things about you. Your mom. For months now." Olivia looked genuinely pained. "At Rebecca's engagement party, she told my mom that you were jealous of Rebecca's happiness. And at the Williams dinner last month, she told the whole table that the family was walking on eggshells around you, that you were emotionally unstable. She made it sound like you were the problem." I stared at her, stunned. "Why would she do that?" "I don't know, but I've heard it more than once. Subtle digs, concerned tones. Never outright vicious, just enough to shift the narrative. She's been planting seeds, Lisa. With everyone." Olivia squeezed my hand. I shut it down every time I heard it, but I'm not in every room. In my mind, I could still hear my mother's voice, calm and deliberate as she dismantled me. "Lisa always makes everything about herself. She's too controlling. We all agreed it's better if she's not there." It wasn't just exclusion. It was character assassination, slow, strategic, and designed to ensure that when the time came, no one would question why I wasn't invited. But I was done justifying, apologizing, or bending to fit into a story that painted me as the villain. Let them have their version. I would begin writing my own. Your controlling behavior. Your need to make everything about yourself. It hadn't just been about the wedding. The truth was bigger, darker. My mother hadn't merely turned Rebecca against me. She had been quietly, persistently eroding my reputation for years. With family, with friends, with anyone who might listen. "But why?" I whispered, more to myself than to Olivia. "What does she gain from all this?" "Control," Olivia answered without hesitation. "You're successful, independent, financially stable. You have what she never did. My mom always said your mother seemed jealous of you, even when we were kids." And suddenly, The pieces began to click. Small moments scattered across decades, reassembled into a pattern I had refused to see. The family dinners I wasn't told about. The compliments that always carried a sting. "You've done so well, especially without a husband." The way she soothed Rebecca's insecurities by replaying the smallest childhood slights. How she convinced my sister I was controlling, when I had done nothing but protect her for 30 years. "I've been so blind," I said quietly. "No," Olivia corrected gently. "You've been a daughter trying to believe the best about her mother. That's not blindness. That's love." By the time I returned home, something had shifted in me. The pain was still present, but now tempered by understanding. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't overreacting. I had been manipulated and misrepresented by the one person I had spent a lifetime trying to please. I turned on my phone. It lit up in a flurry of missed calls and text messages. 28 missed calls. Voicemails from my mother, escalating from cold disapproval. "You're making this about you again." To outright threats. "You've left me no choice but to tell people what you've done." To an absurd suggestion of peace. "We can fix this, but only if you apologize." My father had called once. His voice, barely audible above the hum of traffic, was hesitant and tired. "Your mother's very upset. I didn't know any of this was happening. Please call when you're ready." And then came a single text message from Rebecca, timestamped 3:42 a.m. "I'm so sorry, Lisa. Mom's been lying to me for months. James and I just found out about the honeymoon. Please call me. Please. I need my sister back." I stared at the message for a long time. It felt genuine, raw. But after everything, after the living room ambush, the silence, the betrayal, I couldn't call her. Not yet. I needed context. I needed the truth, unfiltered and free of my mother's voice. I sifted through the rest of the messages. Uncle Robert, predictably aligned with my mother, had left a long voicemail, lecturing me on respecting my elders. My grandmother had called too. Her voice sounded tired, confused, asking if I was unwell. Clearly, she had received a version of events shaped by my mother's framing. But then came an unexpected voice. Aunt Catherine. She was rarely involved in family conflict, always diplomatic and quiet. But her message was direct and striking. "I've seen your mother do this before, Lisa. She did it to me. Call me. We need to talk." I called her first. Her voice was warm, almost maternal in a way my own mother's had never been. "Oh, Lisa," she said immediately. "Are you all right?" "Not really," I admitted. "I don't understand why this is happening. Why would Mom do this?" "Because you threaten her," she said gently. "You always have. You've built a life she couldn't control. She resents that. Deborah needs to feel indispensable. And when she can't control someone, she isolates them." I sank into a chair, stunned by the clarity of her words. "She's been turning Rebecca against me for months," I said, "convincing everyone I'm the problem." "She did the same to me," Catherine said. "Years ago, when your father and I were close, before he married her. She told him lies about me, stirred up tension where there was none. By their wedding, I wasn't welcome either. She wanted all of his loyalty, all of his attention." I pressed a hand to my chest, as if it would calm the ache growing there. "Dad never told me." "He wouldn't," she replied sadly. "Your father avoids conflict at all costs. Always has. It's easier to go along with her version than stand up to her." A pause. "But this doesn't have to end the way it did for me. You still have time to stop the pattern. To protect your relationship with Rebecca." Her words stayed with me long after we hung up. I needed more clarity. So I called Andrea, my best friend from college, now a licensed therapist. She listened patiently, and though she spoke cautiously, her insight was razor sharp. "This is classic narcissistic triangulation," she explained. "Your mother sets herself at the center and pits others against each other, especially when someone threatens her sense of power. She's made me the scapegoat," I said slowly, the truth settling heavily. "Yes," Andrea confirmed. "And Rebecca is the golden child, idealized, so long as she stays aligned. But now that the truth is coming out, the dynamic could shift. The most important thing right now is your boundaries. Protect your peace, but leave the door open for Rebecca to choose you." I was still absorbing her words when my phone rang again. "James." I hesitated, then answered. Lisa! He sounded breathless. Anxious. Thank God. It's been chaos here. Rebecca's been crying all night. What's going on, James? I asked evenly. I'm not sure where we stand. We found out, he said quickly. Everything. What your mother's been doing. The lies. The altered emails. She even changed travel confirmations to make it look like the honeymoon was her idea. I closed my eyes. It didn't surprise me anymore, but it still hurt. She told Rebecca you canceled out of spite, he continued. Said you were jealous, that you were emotionally unstable. But this morning, I confronted her. I showed Rebecca the booking receipts, the dates, the emails you sent me. It's all unraveling. And what did Rebecca say? My voice was quiet now, bracing. She broke down, James said. She kept saying she didn't know what was real anymore. That she let your mom take over because it felt easier. Because she didn't want to upset anyone. He hesitated. She wants to talk to you. In person. Without your mother involved. I let the silence linger before answering. I'm not ready. Not yet. But I'll think about it. Please do, James said gently. She misses you. We both do. I ended the call with my heart in knots. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe her. But trust, once broken like this, couldn't simply be patched over with apologies and tears. If Rebecca wanted her sister back, she'd have to earn it. And I was no longer the woman who begged for scraps of love and inclusion. I was finally learning how to protect myself. Rebecca took a steadying breath, but her voice betrayed the weight of what she carried. I believed her, she said simply. I believed every word Mom told me about you. I said nothing, allowing the silence to stretch, not as punishment, but as space. For once, I didn't rush in to ease her discomfort. I had spent a lifetime doing that. She told me you didn't want to be involved, Rebecca continued. That you were critical, dismissive, resentful of me getting married. She even showed me screenshots. Texts I thought came from you, canceling plans, saying you were too busy, that you didn't have time for bridezilla nonsense. She shook her head, eyes welling. I had no idea they were fake. She changed your name in my contacts, rerouted messages. I never questioned it, because she's our mom. I thought she was trying to protect me. And I thought I was losing you, I replied, my voice calm but resolute. Every ignored message, every decision made without me, it felt like being erased in real time. Rebecca wiped her eyes. You were never erased. You were the only person I trusted before all this. That's what makes it worse. I opened the folder beside me and pushed it gently across the table. Everything is here, I said. The payments I made, the reservations I booked, the texts I actually sent. Not because I need validation, but because I need you to see what's real. She flipped through the pages, pausing over the honeymoon details, the first-class flights, the villa overlooking the sea. I thought she arranged all of this, she whispered. No, she didn't, I said. And when I canceled it, it wasn't out of spite. It was out of self-preservation. Because I realized I was giving everything, time, money, trust, and getting nothing but silence and suspicion in return. Rebecca looked up, her eyes red-rimmed. I don't know how to fix this. I'm not asking you to fix it, I said. I'm asking you to take responsibility for your choices. You may have been misled, but you still let me walk out of that house while you sat there and said nothing. A pause. I know, she whispered. I was scared. Mom was relentless. She said if I didn't cut you out, the wedding would fall apart. That you'd sabotage it. That you were trying to make it about you. I studied her for a long moment. Do you believe that now? No, she said without hesitation. I see it all clearly. I see her clearly. And I see how much I hurt you. James joined us then, slipping into the seat beside Rebecca with a quiet nod. He didn't interrupt. I want to make this right, Rebecca said. I want you at the wedding. Not as a guest. As my sister. My maid of honor, if you'll still have that title. You always should have had it. I exhaled slowly. I appreciate that. But this isn't just about a wedding anymore, Rebecca. It's about years of a dynamic that has been deeply damaging. To me, to you, to all of us. She nodded. Then let's start there. Not with the wedding. With the relationship. I want to rebuild it. On your terms. I met her eyes, finally, without bitterness. Then in the first step, I said gently, is that my mother is no longer welcome in conversations about me. If she says something about me, question it. Better yet, verify it. Done, Rebecca said, her voice steadier now. And second, I added, we have to acknowledge that healing doesn't come with a dress fitting or a seating chart. It's going to take time. Trust isn't restored in a single conversation. I know, she said, but I'm willing to do the work, if you'll let me. I didn't answer right away, because forgiveness wasn't automatic. It wasn't easy. It wasn't about pretending the pain hadn't happened. But maybe, just maybe, it could begin here. With honesty, with accountability, with a sister sitting across from me, finally seeing me fully again. I closed the folder, pushed it aside. We'll see, I said, not coldly but truthfully. One step at a time. Rebecca smiled through tears. One step at a time. As we left the cafe together, there was no dramatic reconciliation. No movie script moment of reunion. Just two women, carrying years of family weight between them, taking one tentative step toward something different. Something real. Something free. I believed her, Rebecca said at last, her voice unsteady. 4 months, Mom showed me messages, texts that appeared to be from you, canceling plans, criticizing my wedding choices, claiming you were too busy with your career to care about the details. Tears slipped down her cheeks. I believed it because it was easier than believing our mother could lie that completely. That deliberately. My breath caught. She showed you fake texts. Rebecca gave a small, broken nod and retrieved her phone. James figured it out. Look at this. She handed it over, scrolling through a series of messages attributed to me, but the tone was foreign. Curt dismissals, complaints about wedding costs, subtle jabs disguised as sarcasm. None of them in my voice, yet all labeled with my name. She had access to my phone, Rebecca said quietly. She created a contact using her number, saved under your name. 4 weeks, maybe longer, when I thought I was texting you, I was actually messaging her. And she replied, pretending to be you. She hesitated, and she deleted real texts. I never received half of what you actually sent. The precision of the manipulation was staggering. But when we saw each other in person, I asked, trying to reconcile the timeline. Didn't anything seem off? We barely saw each other these last few months, Rebecca said. And when we did, Mom was always there, redirecting the conversation, reinterpreting everything you said afterward to paint you in the worst possible light. She looked up just as James approached, setting down 3 coffees and taking the seat beside her. She poisoned everything, she said softly. James nodded. Lisa, I'm so sorry. I should have seen it sooner. I turned to him. How did you figure it out? The honeymoon, James replied. When the cancellation notice came through, Rebecca was confused. She didn't even know about a honeymoon in Bali. Your mother told her you'd offered it as a gift, then cruelly revoked it when you were excluded from the wedding. He shook his head. It didn't make sense. Why would someone spend that kind of money only to weaponize it? That's when we started digging. Phone records, message logs. Once we began comparing timestamps, everything unraveled. The final proof, he added, was on your mother's tablet. She'd saved screenshots of the fake conversations she'd written, probably so she could keep her lies consistent. I reached into my bag and slid a folder across the table. I brought evidence too, original emails, bank transfers, confirmations for everything I booked or purchased. Rebecca and James sifted through the documents. Their expressions shifted from disbelief to dawning horror as the truth laid itself bare. That night at your parents' house, James said quietly, Rebecca thought we were going there to reconcile. Your mother told her you were angry and needed to be confronted about your behavior. She had no idea what was coming. Rebecca bowed her head. I froze. When Mom began speaking for all of us, I didn't know what to do. By the time I realized what was happening, you were already gone. She reached for my hand. I never agreed to exclude you from my wedding. I never wanted that. You're my sister, Lisa. My best friend. I want you standing beside me if you still can. A lump rose in my throat. After months of gaslighting and suspicion, her words felt like balm to a wound I hadn't dared hope would heal. I'm glad you see it now, I said quietly. But this is bigger than one misunderstanding. What happened wasn't accidental. It was calculated. It was a pattern. James nodded grimly. After you left that night, Rebecca confronted your mother. The things she said, it was like watching a mask drop. There was no remorse, only justification. She claimed she was protecting Rebecca from your influence. And when I told her I wanted you back in the wedding, Rebecca added, she threatened to cut financial support. She even said she'd tell the entire family I was having a nervous breakdown. I swallowed hard. That's what she's been saying about me. Exactly, James said. It's her pattern. She isolates, discredits, controls. Anyone who challenges her narrative becomes the enemy. For the next hour, we traced the full extent of her deception. Forged texts, deleted messages, misinformation spread throughout our social circles, financial coercion, and emotional triangulation. Each detail built upon the last, painting a picture of chronic emotional abuse that extended far beyond a single event. I've arranged a meeting, I said, finally, my voice steady. Tomorrow evening. I've invited Dad, Aunt Catherine, and a few others who deserve to hear the truth. I want to speak plainly, calmly, but firmly. They need to know. Rebecca didn't hesitate. I'll be there. It's time this stops. For the first time in months, I believed her. And for the first time in my adult life, I believed in myself enough to face whatever came next, with or without the family that had once defined me. The fake messages, the financial records, the first-hand accounts of my mother's public outbursts. Each piece of evidence laid bare a long-standing pattern. Aunt Catherine recounted eerily similar experiences from decades earlier. James detailed my mother's unhinged episode at their apartment, and my father, silent through most of the presentation, grew visibly paler as the truth unfolded. When he finally spoke, his voice was low and tremulous. I knew some of it, he admitted. Not the full extent, but enough that I should have acted, should have protected you. His eyes met mine, heavy with guilt. I chose peace over your safety, over truth. I'm so sorry, Lisa. Then, as planned, my mother arrived, under the impression that this was a simple budget discussion for the wedding. Her confident stride faltered as she stepped into the room and took in the assembled faces, the folder of documents laid out on the coffee table. What is this? She demanded, eyes narrowing as they swept across the room. A conversation, I said evenly. A chance for truth. What followed was as predictable as it was painful. Immediate denial, wild accusations of conspiracy, attempts to fracture alliances using old tactics. When those failed, her fury boiled over, first cold and sharp, then loud and uncontrolled. And finally, when faced with incontrovertible evidence, the tears came, accompanied by vague pleas of good intentions. I only ever wanted what was best for this family. I won't be treated this way, she snapped. Not after everything I've done for Rebecca for this wedding. Rebecca rose then, calm but resolute. About the wedding, she said, facing our mother directly. Lisa will be my maid of honor, as she always should have been. If you cannot respect her, truly respect her, you'll have a much smaller role in the wedding. And in our lives. My mother's face twisted in disbelief. You would choose her over me? Your own mother? I'm choosing truth over manipulation, Rebecca replied. I'm choosing health over harm. Mom turned sharply to my father, expecting reinforcement. She won't get away with this. Tell them, Thomas. But, for perhaps the first time in their marriage, he did not come to her defense. Deborah, he said firmly, enough. Look at what you've done. Look at what this has cost us. This ends now. The conversation didn't result in a clean resolution. There were no hugs, no tearful reconciliations. My mother left in a fury, vowing to make us regret this betrayal. But something irrevocable had shifted. The truth had been named, the pattern of abuse exposed, and for once, it had not been allowed to continue. We were far from healing fully, far from resolving every wound. But for the first time, I felt we were no longer lost in the fog. We were walking, slowly perhaps, but steadily, toward something better. In the final week before Rebecca's wedding, a cautious new normal began to form. Following the intervention, my mother cycled through every strategy she had mastered over the years. Silence, guilt, dramatic apologies, and finally, a brittle outward compliance. But the performance couldn't mask the resentment in her eyes. Remarkably, my father remained steadfast. No longer the passive enabler, he voiced his support for Rebecca's decision to reinstate me as maid of honor, something I hadn't realized I needed until I heard it from him. During a quiet evening on my apartment balcony, he confessed what I sensed had taken him a lifetime to articulate. "I convinced myself that silence was the same as peace," he said, eyes on the skyline. "That if I didn't add to the chaos, I was helping. But I see now, I was only giving it space to grow. I should have protected you both. I didn't." His remorse wasn't performative. It was real. And strangely, it healed a piece of me that had long gone numb. Rebecca and I, too, were slowly rebuilding, layer by fragile layer. Our weekly brunches resumed, filled with both grief and laughter. We mourned what we'd lost, but we also celebrated what we still had. A bond bruised, but not broken. "I keep thinking about what might have happened," she said during one such brunch, her voice soft, "if James hadn't discovered the fake texts." "Let's not go there," I said, reaching across the table to squeeze her hand. "We're here now. That's what matters." As for my mother, the family laid out clear, non-negotiable conditions for her participation in the wedding. No unilateral decision-making. No private dealings with vendors. No efforts to isolate, manipulate, or spread misinformation. "And if I refuse?" she asked, her tone icy. "Then you'll attend as a guest only," Rebecca replied calmly. "And your presence will have no influence on the ceremony or reception." Surprisingly, she agreed, but it was clear her acceptance was tactical, not heartfelt. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. Her cordial tone came with a razor edge. But the boundaries held. And perhaps more importantly, we held. As for me, the devastation I'd endured became a strange kind of catalyst. It forced me to examine the family dynamics I had long accepted as normal. With help from a trauma-informed therapist, I began to understand how deeply ingrained the patterns of people-pleasing, appeasement, and self-erasure had become in me. I was learning, slowly, to unlearn, to replace silence with truth, to honor my intuition instead of gaslighting myself, and most of all, to believe that love, real love, is never built on fear. "Your worth isn't measured by what you provide to others," Dr. Marshall reminded me during a particularly difficult session. "Not financially, not emotionally, not practically." Those words became a mantra as wedding preparations entered their final phase. I resumed my role as maid of honor, this time with boundaries in place. Yes, I coordinated the bridesmaids. Yes, I helped with final details. But I no longer sacrificed my well-being to preserve others' comfort. My energy, my time, my finances, these were no longer available on demand. I also rebooked a more modest version of the honeymoon for Rebecca and James, still thoughtful, still generous, but rooted in a new understanding of healthy giving. "This is a gift," I told them, offering the revised itinerary. Freely given, with no strings attached, not a payment for inclusion or affection. The day of the wedding dawned clear and bright, a welcome contrast to the emotional storms of the past months. The ceremony was set for 4 p.m. at the Clayton Hotel, leaving the morning free for preparations and quiet reflection. To her credit, Mom upheld the agreement. Outwardly cordial, she played her role as mother of the bride with polished precision. Her interactions with me were brief, measured, and laced with effort, but the restraint held. As I helped Rebecca into the gown I hadn't seen her choose, I felt a quiet ache for the uncomplicated joy this day should have held. She caught my expression in the mirror. "I wish we could undo the last few months," she said softly. "I don't," I answered. As painful as it was, it brought truth to light. We're building something more honest now. Healthier. She turned, luminous in ivory lace. "When did my big sister get so wise?" "Probably around the time my little sister got so brave," I replied, adjusting her veil with a smile. The ceremony itself was beautiful. I stood beside her, bouquet in hand, as she and James exchanged vows with clarity and heart. Mom sat in the front row, her posture flawless, her face unreadable. Her eyes met mine only once, an inscrutable glance, but even that was progress. And yet, the most surprising moment came later. During the reception, as I stood by the gift table tidying displaced cards, I heard a voice behind me. "The calligraphy is beautiful," Mom said. That was your doing, wasn't it? I turned, expecting a backhanded compliment. But her face, though cautious, held something unfamiliar, quiet appreciation. Yes, I said simply. Rebecca mentioned liking hand lettering. She nodded. Silence stretched. Then, in a tone I hadn't heard from her before, she added, "You've always had a gift for noticing what matters to people." I never had that. Not really. The admission, small but unprompted, caught me off guard. She looked away, then continued. The therapist Catherine recommended said I need to learn to acknowledge other people's strengths without feeling threatened by them. A dry laugh. Apparently I have work to do. You're seeing a therapist? I asked, surprised. Your father insisted. After everything. She hesitated. I don't expect this to fix us. I know trust takes time, if it's even possible. But I am trying. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't a redemption arc. But it was a crack in the armor. And that was enough for now. In the month that followed, we began family therapy, small steps in a long journey. Mom was resistant at first, then more engaged as she found language for her needs that didn't rely on control. Dad began speaking up more, finally stepping into a role of integrity he'd long avoided. Rebecca and I grew closer than we had been in years. Our relationship, no longer codependent or curated for family optics, was rebuilt on something more solid: respect, honesty, resilience. As for me, I kept doing the deeper work. With a therapist trained in family trauma, I confronted the patterns I'd internalized: perfectionism, overfunctioning, confusing self-sacrifice with love. I learned to name my limits, to trust my instincts, to step away from what hurt, even when that meant stepping away from people I loved. Tyler was by my side through all of it, steady, kind, patient. 6 months after the wedding, on a hike to our favorite overlook, he proposed. I said yes, but I had one condition. Our wedding stays ours, I told him. No drama, no chaos, small circle, clear boundaries. He laughed. Deal. Life moved forward. Mom's progress was uneven, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. But there was progress. Dad rediscovered pieces of himself long buried. Rebecca and James had a daughter, a bright-eyed baby girl with my name as her middle. And me. I found peace. Not perfection, but peace. Here's what I've learned. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. Boundaries aren't rejection. They're love in its most honest form. You are not selfish for refusing to carry the emotional weight of an entire family. And perhaps most importantly, your worth is not something anyone else gets to define. If you're reading this and navigating your own fractured family dynamics, if you've been excluded, scapegoated, manipulated, or made to feel too much for setting a boundary, know this. Sometimes the door you thought had slammed shut was actually the first one to ever open. Folded hands, I'd truly love to hear from you. Have you ever had to stand up to family manipulation or draw difficult boundaries with someone you love? How did you find the strength to honor your worth, especially when others couldn't or wouldn't? Speech balloon, share your story in the comments. Your voice might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. If this story resonated with you, please consider liking, subscribing, and sharing with others who may be walking a similar path. Your support means so much as we continue exploring the messy, courageous, and beautiful work of healing. And always remember, your story matters, your boundaries are valid, and your worth was never up for debate. Thank you for being here.